Hi guys, welcome to this video lesson. Today's topic would be William Shakespeare. I'm going to introduce to you this great artist, and he was also a big master of the theater. I just want to show you something about his life, some details dealing with his life. But we just know very little about his personal history because he was a kind of a mysterious figure. And okay, we can hint from two primary sources to get some information about his life. And these sources are his works and also some legal and documents which have survived from the Elizabethan times. Okay, because he lived during the Elizabethan age, we have to remember during the time, the reign of Elizabeth I. Well, I just want to show you this exercise dealing with his life. And okay, his town, he was born in Stratford upon Avon. This is the town, the little village where he was born in April 1564, and probably the date was the 23rd of April, which actually is a Saint George's Day, and he's a very important patron saint in England. He and probably this was also the date of his death. Okay, his father was a yeoman. A yeoman was in the time of Elizabeth, the first, the queen. The yeoman was a landowner, a farmer. Yeah, it's like to say a little landowner. In Italian, we can translate this word like piccolo proprietario terriero. Okay, so he owned some lands, and he was absolutely a successful tradesman. So he was, at the beginning, he was very rich, the father of Shakespeare. But at a certain times he met some financial difficulties. William was the eldest son, and he attended the local grammar school in Stratford upon Avon, his village. Okay, in attending this school, he acquired a good knowledge of the English language and of the classical authors. After this, when he was grown up, he married Anne Hathaway. Shakespeare was only 18, so he got married very young, but she was older than him. She was 26. They had three children, Susanna and the twins, Judith and Hamnet. Hamnet unfortunately died he was very young, and Shakespeare suffered a lot from this loss, for losing his son, his little son. But anyway, in 1584, he had to leave Stratford, uh, probably because he had been caught deer hunting. This is a probably reason why he left and went to London. He went to live. He moved and lived in London from this time, 1584, from this starting from this time in his life. And in this period, while he was living in London, he experienced the playhouse, the big world of the playhouse. He entered into an acting company, one of the major acting companies of the time, and but first he had a very minor role. But thanks to his great wit, because he was very clever, he was very skillful in the field of the theater, and he came very soon to be distinguished, not as a great actor, but as an excellent playwright. So he was able to write excellent plays. In 1593, the London theatres were closed because of the plague, the bubonic plague. And Shakespeare, in this time, needed the support, also financial support of a private patron. And his patron was a nobleman, a young nobleman, the Earl of Southampton, and this young nobleman became his patron, and he dedicated some poems, some sonnets to his patron, a very important figure in his life, the Earl of Southampton. When the theaters reopened, Shakespeare became a shareholder and also the main playwright of the most successful company of actors in London, and this company was called the Lord Chamberlain's Men. Okay, he started his great career in theater, and he became also the manager of the Globe Theatre, who was built in 1599. And inside this Globe Theatre, most of his plays were performed. Between 1519 and 1596, he wrote some of his most popular historical dramas. But also to this period belonged the history plays, which were written between 1593 and 600. And also during this period, he put 10 comedies onto the stage. And these comedies were like these comedies included the farce. The farce are comedies with ridiculous situations, and also some romance, which is like a play dealing with love stories, the romance. The great tragedies were written between 1595 and 1605. During the last part of his life, he retired and went back to live in Stratford upon Avon, which was his birthplace, his birth town. He died in 1616, and he was 52 years old, and was buried into the local church. After 7 years from his death, some of his friends and also fellow actors published an edition of 36 of his plays, and this edition of 13 plays were included in one volume, which was called First Folio. The first folio was very famous because it was the first edition of 36 of his plays. Perfect. Now I just want to talk to you about the dating of the plays, because it's very important to date his plays. Okay, let's go to page 114 of your book. Of your textbook. Shakespeare the dramatist. Okay, we can see that dating back his plays is very important, because only half of his plays were printed during his lifetime. usually sometime after they were performed on the stage. And for this reason, they think these comedies is not very easy because very few records survive. Okay, we can combine three evidences, three proofs to date back his plays, and the proofs are the external proofs, the internal, and the stylistic. The external, to date back the Shakespeare's comedies, Shakespeare's play, we have external evidence, like, for example, the clear mention or the reference to a particular play. The external evidence gives the date of the first performance of any play, but it shows that the play was written before a certain date. After this, we have an internal evidence, an internal proof. And this kind of evidence is when the play itself includes a reference to an identifiable event, an event which was evident. We can identify this event very clearly. And the stylistic proof. This method of dating is very difficult because Shakespeare changed the style very frequently, and for example, a play can reasonably be placed in a in a precise period. Okay, but this stylistic proof is is a very important method for dating back his plays. Okay, by the combination of these three proofs, three methods, most of these plays can be dated approximately. And can be placed into an order of the writing, so it is possible to trace back the Shakespeare's development that looks like this. We have got this grid dating back with a precise year all of his plays, and we can divide the plays into the history plays, which were plays that have an important protagonist, main character, which was an English king, really existed, like Henry VI, Richard III, King John, were very popular English kings. Henry V and Henry VIII, which was the father of Elizabeth I, very popular, very important kings in the history of England. And also we have a Roman emperor, Julius Caesar. Okay, so we have a tragedy also inspired to this great Roman emperor belonging to the Roman time. Then we have the dating of all his comedies and romances. For example, Two Gentlemen of Verona, The Taming of the Shrew, A Midsummer Night's Dream of the Merchant of Venice, Match About Nothing. And the tragedies, like Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, Macbeth. Okay, we have a precise date. We can have a precise dating back of his plays, and we have this precise scheme in order to trace Shakespeare's development into the drama. Now I just want to talk about um, the Shakespeare's play and the general features of his plays, like for example, the evolving of the scenes. The progress of a Shakespearean play is usually linked to a gradual that the things, the content in Shakespeare's plays is very mysterious at the beginning, but becomes very clear and apparent only much later during the play. Only at the end of the play, things comes to a clarification. And for example, also the opinions and some assumptions, they maybe they seem to be unimportant at the beginning, but then turns out to be decisive after several scenes during the play. We have also a frequent contrast between the scenes with many characters. In some scenes we have many characters, in other scenes we have just a few characters. We have also the contrast, for example, of scenes including the public life, or scenes more dedicated to private life. We have scenes full of action, or other scenes more quiet and devoted to the reflection. We have very big scenes, major scenes with full of crucial events, which are preceded or followed by shorter scenes, not so important scenes. And their function is simply to provide some information, the function of the shorter scenes. Okay, sometimes Shakespeare leaves some question open in order to let the audience to think about the answer to this enigma of this the mystery, which is left open when the play is over. Okay, this is the open ending. It is a technical device, the open ending of the story. Let's see the structure. Okay, Shakespeare disregarded most of the time. It didn't follow the three Aristotelian unities, the unities of time, place, and action. And for these reasons, the structure of Shakespeare's plays was very flexible. He didn't give so much importance to the division between acts, and and during the Elizabethan theatre, there was no curtain which followed between the acts, so the plays were performed without any break. And as a rule, during the Shakespeare's plays, the scene is over when all the actors, the characters, have left the stage. Soliloquies, which are solo speeches, the famous monologues, asides, which is when an actor addresses directly to the audience, or the introductory passages in a prologue, or the chorus, the funeral oration, the deathbed speeches, are very important conventions used by Shakespeare. And these conventions became were very natural when acted on the stage, And thanks to these conventions, the contact between the actors and the audience became very close, very strict, very intimate, we can say. The stage directions, we have after Shakespeare, the stage directions were added by the editors, especially during the 18th century. Um, uh, but as regarding the stage direction, the text itself, the text of the play, provides the information about the atmosphere or the feeling of a scene or the way in which the characters enter onto the stage or leave the stage. These directions and the descriptions are um, are often given indirectly or hidden in a question or a metaphor. Shakespeare asked for the active cooperation of the spectator in making the play, so that the play can come alive in the spectator imagination. The characters are very important. The characters in Shakespeare's play don't belong to a social class in particular. We have got a source of hierarchy which forms the background of his plays. There is always a man belonging to an aristocratic family or to the royal family. We have always a king or a prince, a duke or a statesman. A statesman was a very respected man or an experienced politician. And another type character is the nobleman. Okay, after the aristocracy, the list of characters descends to the nurses, rustics, and servants, so to the lower classes. Okay, all the social levels of society is reflected in Shakespeare's plays. Another very important feature is the family ties. We have the relationship between the father and mother with his sons and daughters, brothers, the relationship between brothers and sisters, and these relationships were often contrasting. There was always a conflict between the family components of in Shakespeare, and above all between the older and the younger generations. So we have a very important theme in Shakespeare was the generation gap. We can see this important feature in Romeo and Juliet. The generation gap was a very important feature of this tragedy and in his tragedies in general. And then we have symmetrical correspondences. Most of the times we have, for example, in his plays, 3 lords and 3 ladies, the heads of 2 hostile families and their households, 2 lovers, 2 princes, and 2 brothers. So in a symmetrical way, he uses these symmetrical correspondences. And after this, the use of the variety of the style is very important because he uses different levels of speech and action in order to portray, to show his characters from different angles, like the close-up, or he just saw his character at a distance. Okay, in order to do so, a character may suddenly change in the stylistic. He used a very change in the stylistic form, in the language style. We have some changes from everyday speech, everyday prose, to solemn verse, and he often uses allegorical scenes or songs, music and dances, and magical transformation. So he used a wide range and variety of language style. The use of imagery, is very important in his plays. He used a lot of rhetorical figures, a lot of language devices like the similes, the metaphors, the assonance, alliteration, and the image clusters, which are images forming a group. Recurrent groupings of metaphors and similes. These image clusters are often used in Shakespeare's plays. After this, we have some characteristic image motifs in his plays, like, for example, the use of the light and dark imagery, like in Romeo and Juliet, the clothes imagery, images relating to the clothes, for example, in Macbeth, or figures of disease, corruption, and death in the language of the tragedy of Hamlet, for example. These image clusters, these images forming a group, so we have groups of images, are connected to the main themes of the play, and we have to say, very important, the use of vocabulary in his plays, which has never been surpassed. He was a master in the use of vocabulary because he used obscure and archaic words, or also mythological allusions. He actually invented a dramatic number of new words, and we often may talk about the Shakespeare's legacy, which is strongly connected with the use of language, which was very characteristic in Shakespeare. So he left to us a legacy with his very particular use of the language, and he invented a dramatic language, actually. He used also a great variety of verse structure. It is impressive, the verse structure, the different verse structure he used. He reshaped the regular blank verse line. The classical blank verse line was reshaped, changed, with the use of some irregular lines from one play to the other. So he varied the use of the language, the use of the structure. So the blank verse was reshaped into a new model, which became characteristically Shakespearean. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for your attention, and bye bye, take care.